Duchesne, 815-722-2821. Financing available. Find out more online at reduchene.com.
Are going to come right down to the wire. Yeah, he really likes this field. Team of the Week MVP.
I like Reich.
I like Reich.
Since 2016, it's been my privilege to represent the people of the 63rd District. I want to continue representing you as an independent voice in Springfield.
I like Reich. We like Reich.
We're here to help you with your problems that result from an automobile accident or an injury on the job or the loss of a loved one. There's no reason you should go through this alone and guess that you're doing things right.
We deal with tragedies that affect families and individuals every day.
Come here and protect your interest. We've been doing this collectively for over 100 years. Let's put that experience to work for you.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Friday Night Drive podcast. I am Kyle Nabors, and we have made it to the bittersweet final weekend of the high school football season. State championships are just a little more, well, no, not a little more. It is now 48 hours, less than 48 hours away here. It is Wednesday morning, November 22nd. Souce, how you doing?
Not too bad. Getting ready for, what I expect to be a pretty exciting state finals weekend.
Yeah, it is looking like a good slate of games down in Normal. Will be there for the first time in a long time. Illinois State University hosting the state championship game after being at Champaign and Northern Illinois for the last decade plus, and Champaign for a long time before that. Souce, what are you expecting this weekend in Normal in terms of atmosphere, just how things are going to go?
It'll be interesting to find all those answers out. Got kind of a little bit of a sneak preview back in week one when I went to see St. Louis and Mount Carmel play. Obviously, expecting bigger crowds, but there was a pretty good crowd in that week one matchup between those two powerhouses. And, it felt cozy. It felt like if the stands were filled on both sides, you could get a lot of a noise and energy in that place. And I'm interested to see if that comes to fruition. We've talked about this a lot before, for all that, that Champaign brought to the table. One thing that they could never get past was the fact that you really couldn't create an environment where it felt like, there were lots of fans in the there wasn't a lot of electricity, that you would hope to have for a state final. I love the facility, but it's just for this particular event, I think we might have found the sweet spot here. It's interesting to see if we have.
Zach checking in with us this morning live. He says, "Hey, Steve and Kyle, I just wanted to wish you guys a happy Thanksgiving, safe travels, and a wonderful weekend of football ahead of us. Thank you for all your hard work this year." Thanks, Zach. Everyone, if you are watching live with us this morning on Facebook or YouTube, please do jump into the comments. We'd love to hear from you, answer your questions here. Of course, follow us on Twitter or X at Kyle Nabors, at The Souce. You can find us on our Friday Night Drive account at FN Drive. Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as well. Give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're live with you guys throughout the season now. Souce, we got Michael Dwojak going to be joining us here, who covers the Catholic League and East Suburban Catholic Conference for us in a little bit. But we're going to start and work our way up from 1A all the way up to Class 8A. And in that Class 1A title game here, we get a rematch between Lena Winslow and Camp Point Central. What are your first thoughts when we got this matchup again?
When we got the matchup again, you immediately kind of went back to last year's game and thought about what the differences were between the two teams and how that might adjust heading into this game. I really don't have a lot of statistical justification for this, but my gut feeling is that we're going to get a different game this time. I just think that Camp Point Central will give it a little bit better of a swing. They never seemed able to find their footing in that last year's game. If you went back and looked at it, and I did earlier this week, weren't able to sustain a drive of basically longer than 3 minutes of game time until the fourth quarter. And, that's not everything, but against Lena, you have to be able to keep the football for a little while. I mean, you got to keep it away from them a little bit, sustain some drives, and kind of, maybe try to get them out of what they're most comfortable doing. And Camp was never able to do that last year. But for some reason, I think this team has a little bit different juice to it. That is Camp Point Central has been extremely impressive getting out of the box in the postseason, has jumped out to substantial leads in pretty much every one of their games. And I'm not talking about like a first half lead. I'm talking about like the first 5 minutes. So I think if they can establish themselves early on in the game, get themselves comfortable, I think we might have a better game on our hands here.
Jerron checking in this morning says the only way you can beat Lena Winslow is with the pass and a good defense to stop the run. Rockford Lutheran exposed them in their playoff game, and Chicago Hope exposed them even more. I was looking through Camp Point Central statistics, a really run heavy team, got two running backs at about two guys with I shouldn't say running back, two guys at about 1,000 yards each. Most of their touchdowns there. The starting quarterback there, I don't have the name in front of me, so I don't want to get it wrong, but only about less than 50 pass attempts. I wanted to say it was 7 touchdowns. So they're not a pass-heavy team, but do you think Camp Point Central can maybe go to the air a little bit more after what you saw Chicago Hope do to try and change that script from last year?
I think when you get to this situation, I understand what's being said here, but you have to be careful to not try to deviate too much from what you actually are. Maybe they might sprinkle a little bit more in and try to utilize that maybe a little more than they have. But like I said, you have to be really careful to go, well, wait a minute, these guys are susceptible to the pass. We've thrown less than 50 passes all year, but we think we can. You can't get caught in that trap.
Yeah, particularly a small school level, like where you're 1A, 2A, you don't have huge, like these kids probably haven't practiced like the passing game much all season long. Yeah. We're 14 weeks into the regular season here. These kids have been going since early August. All the 7-on-7s was probably the last time if Camp Point Central participated in any of those over the summer, like they really focused on a passing game. So while there's a possibility to take a few shots, I wouldn't think that they're going to have to. I wouldn't expect there to be a lot of passing in this game, Souce, as you were saying.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. Like I said, I think the Camp Point Central's focus is going to be, hey, like we didn't put our best foot forward last year. Let's concentrate on what we need to do to execute what we do, instead of trying to, fit that proverbial square peg into the round hole, just to try to, exploit what Lena might not be good at. Do what you do well, and if that's not good enough, it's not good enough. But trying to alter in a grandiose way for one football game doesn't ever seem to work out very well.
Bears Insider Podcast checking in here. Rick says, "Happy Thanksgiving, Kyle. See you Tuesday morning for another Bears catastrophic loss. Be well." Souce, I'll tell you what, I did a fist pump. I completely forgot that the Bears didn't play until Monday night this week. And while I love state football, I think both of us will agree. Like, you are absolutely just dead. Like, we're both dead on Sunday. So not having to worry about a Bears game. Yes. So, yes, Rick, we will be back with you on Tuesday morning to talk about Bears losing to Minnesota.
I'm taking this off track a little bit right here, but has there ever been a team with a worst winning percentage that has more national profile games where they're the only option to watch football? I mean, it seems like the Bears are on a Thursday night or a Monday night or Sunday night, like half of the season, and it's incredible considering the quality of the product. It blows my mind. Who made that schedule?
it is a good sitcom, so you got that going for you, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose.
All right, let's go to 2A. We got Wilmington and Athens here, and Seuss. I don't really know how to say this other than the fact that I come into this game thinking Wilmington, when you look at the comparative results, Wilmington handles Moreau Forsyth handily. Moreau Forsyth beat Athens earlier this season. Wilmington just playing really well right now. I have the Wildcats as a fairly substantial favorite in this game.
I don't think that's off base, but I think you have to be really, really careful to look at that Wilmington Moreau Forsyth game and say Wilmington's 5 touchdowns better than Moreau Forsyth. I think that really Wilmington won that game and they deserve to win that game. And I think if they played multiple times, Wilmington would probably win more often than not. But I think that's a classic example of a snowball game. And what I mean by what I say there is, one mistake snowballed into another mistake, and then it snowballed into another mistake, and then all of a sudden, Moreau is in complete chase mode where Wilmington has a pretty good idea of what they're going to be doing pretty much all the time. So that football game did not materialize in the way that I thought it would. I was a little bit more confident than I know you were, and I'm not trying to, score points here.
No, go ahead and dunk on me. I deserve it.
Yeah, that Wilmington would win that football game. I did think they would win it coming in, but I did not expect them to win in the fashion that they did. I expected Wilmington to struggle a lot more in the secondary against Moreau than they did. They stepped up big. They answered the bell. But for this game, I think it really comes down to execution. They both like to do similar things. I do think Wilmington is the favorite in this game, but I'm not convinced it's going to be a runaway like I seem to think a lot of people do. Athens can do some things.
I will say, the rushing numbers are impressive.
They really are, and like I said, I think they kind of mirror each other in a lot of ways. And like Wilmington, if they get a little bit of momentum, like I said, I don't think Wilmington's going to run away and hide here. I do think they're the favorite to win the football game. I think it's just going to be what you kind of expect from two-way based running football teams. If Athens plays well, Wilmington makes some mistakes, we might have a football game.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to Class 3A. Byron versus Mount Carmel. Downstate Mount Carmel, obviously, in this matchup here, Seuss. Offhand here, I'm trying to think. Odds-on favorite for highest scoring game of the weekend?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is one of those situations where Mount Carmel comes in as a substantial underdog in the game, I think.
Yeah.
But the only way that Mount Carmel can win it is to get it into a shootout mode and hope that they can just trade scores. So that's going to create an environment where both these teams can clearly score points. And so it's going to be up tempo. It's going to be the teams are going to go up to the line, thinking that they can score on pretty much any play that they run from scrimmage. So that's going to create an environment where I think we're going to see a lot of points scored in this one. But I also think it's a situation where if Byron kind of gets control of that scoreboard, it might get ugly too.
We know exactly what Byron's going to do in this game, right? We know what the Tigers are going to look like. What's so fascinating to me is Mount Carmel on the other side. I mean, you got over 3,000 yards of rushing offense at a 3A school. But the other thing, when I say a 3A school, it's because you have a starting quarterback who also attempted, I think 204. I think if I got it right here, 204 attempts in the season, 1,700 passing yards, 15 touchdowns. That's a really balanced offense at the 3A level.
Yeah, it is. And it's one of those situations where you kind of look at what Sisson has done over the course of the year. He's the kind of guy that makes you really nervous, especially at the 3A, the smaller school level, because he'll make a lot of plays just out of nothing. You can school and you can scheme and you can do all these things, but sometimes you've just got an athlete who, draws one up in the dirt and goes. And that's kind of what we have here. He's capable of making some plays out of absolutely nothing. So that's something that Byron has to have to put a lot of attention on and make sure that they've got him accounted for. And that's easier said than done. So, I think, like I said before, Byron's going to score. Can Mount Carmel match that at the level Byron scores at? I'm not sure. Mount Carmel's defense is going to give up points in this game. Byron has shown the propensity to not only score points, but shut the opponent down as well. So I think we might get, I don't know if we can have a consistent shootout over 4 quarters between these two teams, but Byron's not going to relent. I'll say that much. Can Mount Carmel match him?
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. We got an early leader in the clubhouse for my favorite name of the weekend, Shade Loudermilk.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yep.
I like that one. Shade Loudermilk. All right.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead. Let's keep moving on here. We're going along pretty quickly here. Let's keep more popping along here. I'm pulling up 4A here. We got St. Lawrence versus Rochester. This is going to be a fun one. St. Lawrence. I'm going to go ahead and bring Michael Dwojak in now, who covers the Chicago Catholic League and the East Suburban Catholic Conference for Friday Night Drive. Michael, how are you doing, man?
Good. How are you guys?
Wonderful. So, St. Lawrence, what can you tell us about, what you're hearing for the Vikings in this matchup against Rochester?
Well, we all expected St. Lawrence to be here, right? Like we all had them winning all these games and that kind of stuff, being IC Catholic, winning on a blocked extra point against Wheaton Academy in the semifinals. I think this team is just, when I talked to Coach Adam Neeson starting at the season, he talked, most coaches say same things. I've watched these guys grow. I've been with them for the last 4 years. Like he talked about how this senior group was his first, recruiting class and that kind of stuff. And, you kind of take that with a grain of salt. You're like, well, every coach is going to be excited about their kids and that kind of stuff. But as the season has gone on, this team has just shown that they know how to win games. And I think that's really important because you got an all-state running back like Aaron Ball who can just, run the ball. He can figure out different ways to kind of score. And you've got a quarterback who can, he can throw the pass, but he can also run. And he's running in key situations for St. Lawrence all season long. And you've got a motivated group at this point. I mean, just hearing what Neeson talked about, like no one expected them to be here at this point. I think that's fair to say. And then I think they're just riding the momentum at this point and aren't really going to change much as to, what they've done. They've found ways to beat IC Catholic, who many consider to be the favorite to win the state title. They beat Wheaton Academy on a blocked extra kick and double overtime. This team has the experience. They know how to do it. Now it's just about, doing it against an unfamiliar foe like Rochester, where you obviously can get tape and that kind of stuff, but maybe you haven't seen that kind of style all season long.
Yeah, Suze. I mean, this St. Lawrence team, they faced Sweden St. Francis. They had a loss there. They had a win over Providence. They had a win over Bennett. They lost to St. Rita. It's not like they haven't faced quality teams. I don't think it's a stretch to say, though, that this is going to be the best team. This Rochester team is going to be the best team they faced all year.
Yeah, I don't think that's a stretch either, especially when you consider, that IC Catholic was limited a little bit in their personnel when St. Lawrence won that game. So I think that would be the team that I would compare them to. When I've looked at St. Lawrence over the course of the week, Michael touched on it a little bit there. I think the biggest credit that they have to their ledger this year is that they've just figured out ways to win football games. They may not be all that pretty. I mean, but when I look back at like what they did in the regular season schedule, other than Providence, the win over Providence, before they got in the playoffs, they had not beat a playoff-bound team. So I didn't know where they were at, really, honestly, heading into the postseason, because while most teams you can play that CCL card and say this is the schedule that they played, St. Lawrence didn't really benefit from that as much as many of the teams in the conference because they played some of the more struggling programs in the league as part of that schedule. So I didn't know where they were at heading into the postseason, to be completely honest with you. But it speaks to what their determination, the way that they've won games here in the postseason, winning the double overtime game against Wheaton Academy, winning the game in the final minute against IC Catholic. This is a team that believes they've got a way to figure it out. and they're going to have to get creative here with Rochester because this is a pretty good team.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about this Rochester team.
Well, I think what comes down to it, like a lot of people think about Rochester, they think about that high-powered offense. They think about the team that is just going to zip down the field by throwing the football, running the football, doing whatever they have to do, and scoring a bunch of points. That is definitely true about this team, but I think the difference for Rochester as opposed to other years that they've come down here with teams is this might be one of the better defenses that Rochester has ever had. They've only allowed, more than 2 touchdowns to 3 opponents this year. And for all that Rochester is, that's pretty uncommon. You have a lot of scores that come out of Rochester where they've won 63-28 or, 52-25, or they tend to give up, some points along the way as well. But this defense isn't letting it happen. And then another little wrinkle to Rochester, heading into the playoffs, they got Parker Gillespie back on the offensive side of the football. Gillespie missed the first 7 games of the season with a knee injury. And I had a friend say that Gillespie, had he been available to them, could have literally lined up almost anywhere on Rochester's offense. And it wouldn't be surprising to see him run the ball, throw the ball, catch the ball in this championship game. And, a couple of people have actually dropped the Hank Beatty comparison on him.
I mean, that's pretty lofty expectations.
Yeah, maybe not to the same quite level, but the same type of mold of player that he can do a lot of different things, is really dangerous in a lot of ways. So that's kind of another wrinkle to this team. The combination of the defense and getting Parker Gillespie back makes this Rochester team really, really scary for a potential opponent heading into this final game.
All right, guys, make sure everyone who is watching us live today, if you could do us a favor, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that. Of course, stick to FridayNightDrive.com all week long. We got a ton of preview content coming up there throughout the week. That's going up throughout the week. We already have 1A and 2A breakdown from the Souce up there. 3A and 4A will be coming up rest of the day, and then 5A through 8A dropping during the day, during Thanksgiving, and on Friday as well. Of course, we'll have full coverage from the state finals. We got 6 guys going down on Friday. We got 8 guys down there on Saturday. A lot of coverage coming your way from the state championships. And on 5A, or on Saturday morning, we'll start with a very, very intriguing matchup in Class 5A between Joliet Catholic and Nazareth. Michael, what are you hearing about this one?
I'm really curious to see, what is Naz going to do this? Like, I feel like we've, always done the superlative about them, 2-4 last season, winning a state championship, but are they really going to go 0-4, to start the year and win the state championship? And I mean, at this point, you just have to be confident, don't you? If you're Naz, like, you just have a great passing game. Logan Malachek is playing probably one of the better playoff performances in the entire state. You just being able to throw the ball everywhere, making key plays. It's not like Naz hasn't beaten anyone, good, in the playoffs. Obviously, winning against Prairie Ridge to start the season. You take down Carmel, you take down Wheaton St. Francis, and you hold on to that. I mean, they just have all the confidence right now of just, being able to do whatever they want offensively, pretty much. And now you've got a defense that has shown that they can, make key plays to stop, high-powered opponents. You were able to stop the triple option against Prairie Ridge. You're able to stop an elite quarterback in St. Francis, and obviously all the talent that Carmel has. So, I mean, if you're Naz, you have to feel great right now. Obviously, if you're a coach, you're probably doing the 1-0 mindset, and you're doing all the, the cliches. But deep down, you're probably feeling great because you just are on a tear right now that you just need to finish that up Saturday morning, and you are just going to make history there.
And then on the other side, Souce, you got a Joliet Catholic team that's playing extremely well here in the postseason. Wins against Peoria, Triad, Morris, Providence. Those first 3 in real blowout fashion. Still going back to that Morris game, and I know Morris had some injuries coming into that game, but still very impressive the way JCA is playing right now, Souce. This all comes down to, this all adds up to a really fun matchup on Saturday morning.
Yeah, it should. And I mean, even when you look at the Providence game, that score is not really kind of indicative of how easily Joliet Catholic kind of controlled that game. Providence scored first, but after that, it was pretty much JCA all the way into, late into the ball game when Providence put a few more points on the board to make it appear closer than it was. This has been a different football team since we started the playoffs. I know I personally was kind of questioning what was going to happen with them after. Let's be honest, I thought it was kind of a lethargic performance from Joliet Catholic in Week 9 against St. Ignatius. They didn't really put their best foot forward, so I didn't know where this team was. And they answered that with authority. It's kind of been an old school Joliet Catholic type of playoff run. Let's lean on the running game and our defense to try to do what we can do. But they can also sprinkle in a little bit of that passing game with Adrian Washington, who's probably one of the more productive wide receivers the Hilltoppers have had in, I can safely say maybe a decade or two. I mean, really is capable of stretching the field and making some plays. I can't think of the last time Joliet Catholic had a receiver with statistics that he's had. So, Joliet Catholic gets a lot of love for, defensive lineman Dylan Johnson. But I think the interesting thing about Joliet Catholic's defense is while Johnson's drawing a lot of attention, drawing some double teams, and allowing the other Joliet Catholic players to kind of step up and make a play, they have a lot of guys on that defense that are willing and capable of making those plays. I can't even, I could make you a list of names and, 6 or 7 guys that could potentially step out of the shadows and make big plays. That's the thing that I think is kind of the undercurrent of the Joliet Catholic defense. Dylan's great, but these other guys are really getting the job done too.
You go back, starting here, and go back to 1A quickly. You go Lena Winslow, then Wilmington 2A, Byron in 3A, Rochester in 4A. So far, I feel like we've had at least moderate to, fairly substantial favorites in each class. This is the first one, guys, where I'm having a real tough time picking this. Are you guys on the same page, or do you guys have a better feel for it than I do?
Yeah, I don't really know what – I feel like this game and maybe the Loyola Lincoln Way East game are probably the tougher games to choose just based on I feel like Naz has kind of shown you the entire year that, you can count them on if you want to, but they're going to find a way to win a game. And Joliet Catholic is at a different level right now. They're just playing at a different, and I saw them earlier in the season against St. Rita. I thought they played well against St. Rita, but I thought it was kind of like, well, maybe this is like, a quote unquote down year for them. They make the semifinals or the quarterfinals or whatever. But they've obviously taken it to a different level right now. And I'm really curious to see, can Joliet Catholic stop Logan Malachuk? I feel like that's a huge matchup that you got to figure out. Can that pass defense really stop him from making big plays, both in the air and on the ground? Like, he can run the ball too and really, take advantage of those opportunities. So, yeah, I think that's a very close matchup. If I had to choose, I'd probably go Naz because you just got to ride the hot hand at this point and go for the history books. But I don't know. It's probably down to a point or two for me if I was, setting the spread or anything like that.
Souce, every time I want to say I'm taking JCA in this game, I picture Logan Malachuk dropping a dime into the back right corner of the end zone against Prairie Ridge in the first round. And I go, am I going to pick against that? It's really tough right now for this one.
Yeah, I mean, I have made my pick, and of course, if you're a Nazareth fan, you got to like it because I've been wrong about Nazareth multiple weeks this season, and I picked Joliet Catholic. Now, unlike in many times, during the regular season, I usually just put the pick down. For the finals, I put a score. I did the old cop-out when you can't really make a decision. I picked it as a 1-point decision in favor of Joliet Catholic because that's genuinely what I feel like it is. It could really kind of come down to that. But, I'm not really joking when I say I've been wrong about Nazareth all along. And maybe it's me trying to, backtrack on the fact that when we started the season, I had Nazareth as a top 5 team. And even after seeing them in week 1, I was like, I still think there's a lot of talent there. I think they can. And then when they dropped to 0-4, I started to, doubt whether or not I was seeing what I thought what I thought they could be. They're such a perplexing story. They're obviously very, very talented. But you still can't ignore the fact that they've lost 5 games this season, regardless of the fact that, that it's come against quality opponents. They still lost 5 games. That happened somehow. So granted, different team now, playing a lot better, but this I'll be disappointed if this is not a great football game. And usually I don't. I don't go that far with one, but boy, it certainly looks intriguing just looking at it on paper and with all the knowledge that we have about these teams at this point.
Class 6A, we get a matchup with Cary Grove and East St. Louis. This is a rematch of 2021. East St. Louis, obviously, back in the title game, lost to Cary Grove in an absolutely epic title game back in 2021. What many consider to be the best state championship game that's ever been played. It's certainly in the conversation. Then last year, East St. Louis really pounds Prairie Ridge, another team from the Fox Valley Conference that runs a triple option. They pound Prairie Ridge in that game, run away for the state championship. What do you think, Zeus? Like, this is a different East St. Louis team than it was a year ago. Obviously, on the offensive line, it's a big difference. Lost that entire starting unit. Different on the defensive side, too. They do have a few names back, but you're going to have a lot of kids that are seeing the triple option for the first time.
Yeah, I have had a hard time kind of getting my finger on exactly where East St. Louis is on a week-to-week basis. Some weeks they look like they are capable of, beating anyone that you line up across from them. And then other times it almost feels like they're kind of toying with the opposition for fun. I don't really know. I know they're exceptionally talented. And like you said, some different faces in different places, but still, when push comes to shove, they have players with experience in big-time games against quality opponents. I don't think that's a really big factor. I guess the thing that is most interesting to me heading into this game is I'd like to be in the war room or the lab to see what Brad Seberg is cooking up here. I just felt like in that matchup 2 years ago, there were a lot of little things that if you weren't like keyed in on them, that Cary Grove did so well. And just, did the little thing that I always hear like football coaches talk about in games where they've pulled off what is most perceived to be a giant upset. Sometimes you win those games in centimeters rather than yards. And it felt like Cary Grove did every little thing that they could do to give themselves an opportunity to win that football game, executed, did it well. Can they replicate it? I don't know. But I'm just interested to see what wrinkles Cary Grove brings to the table to try to combat the skill sets that obviously East St. Louis has in their bag.
Yes, like I said, some different names on East St. Louis compared to a year ago or especially 2 years ago. And I went up to try and pull up the stats for East St. Louis from the IHSA website and got a dead link. Yeah, you're shaking your head now. Yeah. So for people in Northern Illinois that haven't paid as much attention to East St. Louis this year, can you compare them the last couple of years? What's similar? What's different?
Well, I think the constant is the quarterback pops battle. He's the kind of kid that has seen his game develop. Obviously, he has always had kind of weapons on the outside that he can go to and stretch the field with. Jesse Watson is kind of the leading receiver of that group this year. But like always, if you put too much attention on Watson, there's a number of other guys out there that can make big explosive plays too. I think the interesting thing about this East St. Louis offense is Ryan Martin is the leading rusher for this team, but he's not the listed starter. And sometimes he will go long stretches without playing in games. And I'm not sure what the reason is for that, to be honest with you. Sometimes they deploy him, one series on, one series off, or maybe he doesn't play in the first quarter. It was the same thing that happened in the Mount Carmel game. He didn't pop up in that game until fairly deep into the contest. So I don't really know what that is right now. And why that's the case. It was also another reason why I was hoping to get a look at their stats, because I wanted to see how it broke down this year in terms of carries, but obviously wasn't there, so I don't know for sure. But they can score on a dime, but they can also hit pockets where you can make life difficult for them because they want to go. So if you have a team that kind of maybe stops a couple plays in a row, they're a very rhythm-based team. when they're in rhythm, they're awesome. And when they kind of fall out of that rhythm, they can get a little sluggish and loggy on it. So I think the biggest key for East St. Louis in this game, very, very talented defense. Can they stick to those keys? Will it be the things that they struggled with 2 years ago against Cary Grove, or will it be a dominating performance where they seem to have figured out most of the nuances of that offense as they did in beating Prairie Ridge last year? Which one of those shows up? Different personnel in a lot of positions, but also, some guys that know what they're doing, that have a lot of experience in it too. So, you can get an effort all over the spectrum from East St. Louis, and sometimes it's kind of hard to predict which one of those teams is going to show up.
Yeah. And the one thing I will say, we spent a lot of time there kind of dissecting East St. Louis, and I think that's more so because we know what we're going to get out of Cary Grove. We know the triple option. They're playing tremendously well on defense right now, and honestly, they are executing their triple option offense about as well as I've seen them do it. Either them or Prairie Ridge, when each of these teams have made it to a state championship game. This is about as well as I've seen it executed. So they're going to be on top of their game against East St. Louis. It's going to be a fun one, but let's go ahead and move on. Class 7A, Mount Carmel, Downers Grove North. Michael, you saw Mount Carmel on Saturday in that state semifinal against Batavia. All three of us expected the Caravan to win. I don't think any of us would have predicted that margin.
No, that was just Mount Carmel's playing at a different level. Even the Batavia coach said that he's never, they played a lot of teams around Illinois and they just haven't seen a team like that. They're just, talented at every level. They're just talented at every position, and they just know how to win big games at this point. I mean, Darian Dupree is doing ridiculous stuff, like scoring 4 touchdowns in the first 14 minutes. He's breaking like 3 tackles and somehow turning what was supposed to be like a 2-yard, loss into like a, 74-yard gain. Like, he's just a multi-talented player. You got Jack Elliott has stepped into the quarterback position, and he just looks even better than Blaney Dowling did last year. And that defense is just so smothering. And, they're always around you. They're always making plays. The only maybe bad thing you can say about that defense is they kind of created some late penalties that allowed Batavia to drive last week, and some late hits that probably, Jordan Lynch was not happy about and is definitely, working on right now. But this Mount Carmel team is playing at a different level. They talked about that Loyola loss, how it motivated them, how that, they felt like they could have won that game. And now they're on a mission to go out and just show the rest of the state that, they are one of the best teams in the state.
They get a matchup against Downers Grove North. Downers Grove North playing very well this postseason. So there's no battle performing at a high level. But this is a tough matchup here.
I guess the one thing that I can say for Downers Grove North going into this game is they can still enter this contest with a lot of confidence. They've played good teams, beat good teams along this playoff route. A particularly dominant performance last week in the semifinals and beating the top seed in the bracket, Normal Community, and getting there. A little wrinkle to this, and I know weather had a lot to do with this. Last year, these two teams met in the second round of the playoffs. It was a 24-6 win for Mount Carmel. The Downers Grove North was in that game. Now, granted, it's important to point out, weather was a big factor that weekend. It was pretty bad that week, but for Downers Grove North, they're not immune to this. They know they're heading into this game as a giant underdog.
Yeah.
But they have to feel good about the way they're playing heading into it. And if they can come out and do some positive things early in the game, you never know. I mean, put some wind under their sails and try to make something happen. All that being said, big mountain decline, no doubt about it. Because I can't remember the last time I felt like a team was playing as well in the postseason as I believe Mount Carmel is playing right now.
And the coaching staff for Downers Grove North is preaching this. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's two tacks as a coach. I feel like you could take here. You could take the we're the underdog role. No one believes in us, or you could take it as Mount Carmel is a heavy favorite. If we go out there and play scared, we're gonna lose. So let's just go out. We're playing in a state title game. No one expected us to be here. Let's go out and just rip it. I wonder what approach they're taking here, because I think I would take the latter there, right? Like, just let's pull everything out of the bag. If I'm the coaching staff, let's draw up anything we can and let's just go out and have fun and see if we can catch lightning in the bottle and knock the Caravan off balance early in this game.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that they could go with this, and like it's being in a situation like this, playing a team like Mount Carmel, there's not a lot of wrong answers here, because the expectation level is you're going to have to do something spectacular to win the football game to begin with. So you can maybe take a few more risks than you would ordinarily, but hand in hand, Mount Carmel is really a machine right now, and it's like I look back at the way they're doing things, and what they did to Batavia really kind of floored me a little bit, to be completely honest with you. Not that I didn't think that Mount Carmel was going to win that game, but I certainly thought it was going to be significantly more competitive. Because I look back to the way that Batavia played with Lincoln Way East back early in the season, and the fact that Batavia was playing pretty darn well heading into that game, and to see what Mount Carmel did to them in that situation just was really not that I'm surprised that Mount Carmel is a really, really good football team, but it was eye-opening as to what level we're talking about here. And that's where it really comes down to for me.
Michael, you got anything else on this one?
No, I mean, the only thing I could say for Downers Grove North is maybe look at the Loyola tape. I mean, look at what Loyola did. Obviously, I know that's Loyola obviously has different players than Downers Grove North has. Obviously, they got the size and that kind of stuff. But Loyola really is the only team. Maybe East St. Louis did pretty well too in week one. But Loyola is the only team that really has given Mount Carmel any sort of struggle this year. And they did a really good job of just moving the ball up down the field. And the way they were able to do it was pretty much, not letting Mount Carmel score on key, third and fourth downs in their own territory. And whether that's boxing up the middle and not letting Darian Dupree getting a couple yards here or there, or whether it's making sure that you're not letting Darian Dupree catch the ball and kind of zoning in on him. I mean, I think if you're a coach, they've probably done this at this point, but you look at the Loyola tape and you just see defensively you can stop Mount Carmel if you call the right play, obviously, and you also just look at taking Darian Dupree out of this game. They got Jack Elliott. He can run the ball pretty well as well. But if you take away Dupree, you take away a really big component of the Mount Carmel offense.
All right, guys, one game to get to here before we sign off, and that is the Class 8A state championship game between Lincoln Way East and Loyola. We talked earlier about our favorite game for highest scoring game of the week. I think this is probably the easiest pick for lowest scoring game of the week going into it, at least on lowest total, I should say, Souce.
Well, I can't see any way that this one turns into a high scoring back and forth affair. It would go against the grain of both of these two teams and their hallmarks. I've seen Lincoln Way East quite a few times over the last couple of weeks, at least in pieces, and Lincoln Way East has had some really, really good defensive units in the past, and they've been very difficult to move the football against. The ease that this team seems to play defense with right now against teams that usually come in with a pretty high offensive pedigree is really, really, I guess, eye-opening more so than anything else. It's a very, very good defense. And for somebody to hang a bunch of points on that, I don't see it. I mean, you'd have to line up some really, really incredible offensive players all in the same place just to be able to do that, because this is a great defense at all three levels, particularly on the defensive line, which doesn't blitz a lot, but seems to find itself in opponents' backfields on every single play. I mean, I kind of sometimes I kind of want to ask, like, one of their defensive linemen if they want to, put a chair back there. I mean, they're so comfortable in the opposing team's backfield. So it's a really, really great defense. The offense is a little bit more lunch bucket. We're going to do what we have to do to get past you. But they've even shown signs of doing a little bit more now over the last couple of weeks. So I think Lincoln Waste is in a really good place for this game. Is it in a good enough place to beat Loyola? I don't know. I don't know. I'll be completely honest with you. I don't know.
Michael, what are you hearing on the other side here? What are you hearing from the Ramblers?
Well, I mean, Loyola probably had I wouldn't say its worst win of the season, but I mean, they were down 14-3 against York. Like that was the first time. I mean, we've talked about this Loyola defense, how elite it's been all season, obviously comparing it with Lincoln Way East for the whole year. But that was the first time this defense looked like, oh, wait, someone is actually able to do something against this defense falling behind 14-3. So, I mean, I'm really interested to see how that defense responds. I mean, you've seen a couple times this season where you've gotten mixed reviews. I mean, you've had, the defense kind of have a slow start and then they regroup and they do what Loyola does, take away the run and then strangle you there and then take away the pass. But you've also had moments like Mount Carmel where they started the game with 4 or 3 big stops to start the game. So I'm really curious to see how this defense comes out, because if it plays the way it did against Mount Carmel, I don't think Lincoln Way East will do a good job of moving the ball down the field. But I think, if it plays the way it did against York or against, St. Rita earlier in the year, Lincoln Way East would need to take advantage of that pretty early and take advantage of that. And then offensively, I mean, it all comes down to Ryan Fitzgerald. I mean, he's just he's stepped in for Jake Sterney. I think Jake Sterney was a really good player and is doing a lot of great stuff at Colgate right now as a freshman. But I think Ryan Fitzgerald is playing at a higher level than even Sterney was playing at. He's making the right calls. He's making great passes. He's not afraid to run the ball. And he's showing a lot of confidence this entire season. Where Loyola might struggle offensively, Drew McPherson, their starting running back, is dealing with a little bit of an injury. So obviously we won't know anything about that until, game time. No one's going to give us any updates or anything like that. But, is he able to play? Because he's not only, their top rusher, but he's a really big, receiver for them as well, being able to kind of come out from the back. So, the York game was really interesting just to see, Loyola in a position that they've never really been in this entire season. But you also saw Loyola kind of regroup in a way that they'll need to do if they want to compete with Lincoln Way East this Saturday.
Yeah, the Loyola score, or the score against York, gave me a little bit of pause, but I'm still taking the Ramblers to win this game. I do think it's going to be really low scoring, and one of those where if one team is able to break just one big play for a touchdown, it could be the difference in this game. But I'm taking the Ramblers. Souce, how about you?
I'm also taking Loyola. And once again, it was another one of those situations where I was picking scores for this game, and the first time that I put a score down, I think I put 10-7, and then I changed my mind, and I jokingly put 4-2 before finally settling on what I thought it would be. But I like you said, I think this game may hinge on one team breaking a big play here, and then it might actually become a special teams battle. It has before. I mean, This game has come down to field goal differences in the past. They have a lot of history against one another, and none of those games has either of the two teams been able to clearly separate themselves from the other. There's really no way that you could really make a strong case for this game being anything other than a low-scoring defensive struggle based on what's happened in the past.
Michael, are you taking the Ramblers as well?
Yeah, I had a 14-13 score because I just wasn't able to choose. So I just went Loyola 14-13. But if it does come down to special teams, it'll be really interesting. Obviously, Loyola has an all-state kicker in Mikey Baker. He can, make it pretty far and has done a really good job as a wide receiver as well. But I just think based on what we've seen from Loyola, they've found ways to win. They held on to beat Mount Carmel in week 9, obviously to win the CCL ESCC Blue. They found a way to come back, deal with some adversity against York. And I think they find a way against Lincoln Way East. I think that offense has been pretty prolific this season. And even when the defense maybe hasn't played as well as it has all year, I think the offense has found ways to make plays. And I know Lincoln Way East defense is probably the best, if not the second best defense they'll see all season. But this offense has me confident that they'll find a way to make a play or two in order to get over the hill here.
Make sure you follow Michael on X at mdwojak94. Also follow him on Instagram and Threads. He'll be with us down in Normal all weekend for coverage of the state finals. We got to get out of here, though. Souce, can you give us some final thoughts heading into the weekend?
When we look at this weekend coming in, I think the one thing that's really striking to me is that it kind of feels like we're running it back from previous state championship weekends here. 12 of the 16 teams have been at least one state championship game since 2019. So think about that for a minute. Like, usually you've got a little bit of turnover here, but there's really a lot of teams that you're accustomed to seeing in these state championship games. And with that comes the experience of having gone through this before. It's not the same kids, but it's the same coaching staffs. It's the same programs. So they know how to deal with the situation that comes with a state championship game. So I expect a lot of good football games this year. There's obviously going to be some nerves that teams have to work out to be playing in state championship games. But like I said, there's a lot of teams that have been there, done that before. So I think they're going to come out here with purpose, and I think we're going to get an awful lot of good football games. I think particularly on Saturday, I think we could be on tap for a lot of fun.
Sounds like a great reason to stick to FridayNightDrive.com all weekend long. We're going to have a ton of coverage from the state finals down in Normal. For now, though, we're going to go ahead and sign off. I want to thank Michael Dwojak for joining us this morning here. Of course, once again, he covers Chicago Catholic Conference and East Suburban Catholic Conference for FridayNightDrive.com. You can find all of his content there. Again, follow us on Twitter at FN Drive, on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram as well. Go to Friday Night Drive all weekend. We'll be back with you guys early next week here on YouTube to break down the state championship games. Everyone have a great weekend. Enjoy the state final. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Come to Candlelight Inn, home of the original Chicken George and Jan Sauce. Dine in, carry out, and catering available. Located in Rock Falls and Sterling, Illinois, as well as Clinton, Iowa. Come try our original Chicken George today.
Need a roof, vinyl windows, or doors? Call R.E. Duchesne Construction. With an A+ rating for the Better Business Bureau and servicing Will, Grundy, and Kendall counties, call R.E. Duchesne. 815-722-2821. Financing available. Find out more online at reduchene.com.
Are going to come right down to the wire.
Yeah, he really likes this field.
Team of the Week MVP.
I like Reich.
I like Reich.
Since 2016, it's been my privilege to represent the people of the 63rd District. I want to continue representing you as an independent voice in Springfield.
I like Reich. We like Reich.
We're here to help you with your problems that result from an automobile accident or an injury on the job or the loss of a loved one. There's no reason you should go through this alone and guess that you're doing things right.
We deal with tragedies that affect families and individuals every day.
Come here and protect your interests. We've been doing this collectively for over 100 years. Let's put that experience to work for you.